Up until the late 1900s, manual thumb safeties were very common on semi-automatic pistols. It wasn't really till the introduction of the Glock and the beginning of the polymer pistol craze that we started to see them disappear. And I think because of that, a lot of modern shooters don't realize how to use a manual thumb safety and why it's there. Hi, I'm Richard Mann, the author of Handgun Training for Personal Protection. You know, even though the Glock seemed to be the death of the manual thumb safety, a lot of modern polymer pistols come with manual thumb safeties. And what I want to show you is how you use a manual thumb safety and why it's even on a handgun. So there's two types of manual thumb safeties you'll find on semi-automatic handguns. And the first one we're going to talk about is the type you find on a 1911 or a Browning high power, where when the safety is engaged, it locks the slide, so the slide cannot move. Now, you may be wondering, what is the purpose of having a safety, a manual thumb safety on a semi-automatic handgun? Because the primary safety on any gun is your trigger finger. That's absolutely correct. But sometimes that trigger finger gets you in trouble. What happens is people holster too quickly, leave their finger on the trigger, and when they do, the holster comes into contact with their trigger finger, presses the trigger, the gun goes off and shoots them in the leg or the ass cheek. If you have a manual safety on your handgun and that safety is engaged, when you holster, it doesn't matter if your finger's on the trigger. That's why it's called a safety. So probably the most obvious question is, when you're working with a handgun that has a manual thumb safety, is when do you disengage it or engage that safety? Well, when you're coming out of the holster, you do not want to disengage that safety until the gun is pointed completely away from you or anything else. So when you start rotating that gun toward the target, that's a good time to disengage that safety. You go ahead and finish your engagement, bring your gun back into your workspace, take a breath, relax, think about ammunition concerns, and when you decide the world would be a better place if you holstered your handgun, apply the safety. And leave your thumb under the safety with upward pressure. That way, there's no way it can come off and become disengaged before you go into the holster. Then, slide the gun in your holster and you're safe. So what about a pistol that has a manual thumb safety that does not lock the slide, like a lot of the modern polymer pistols? Well, the operation and engagement and disengagement of the safety is all exactly the same. There's one little difference. When you're getting ready to engage the targets, just like with a safety that locks the slide, as you present the target and it clears all parts of your body, then you can disengage the safety. Come up on target, make your engagements, gun back into your workspace, finger off the trigger, relax, decide you want to reholster, and at that time, engage the safety. This is where gets a little different. Lots of times with pistols where they have a safety that does not lock the slide, when you try to holster, the holster's too tight and it may push the slide back. That can cause a stoppage and all sorts of other problems. So what you want to do before you holster is you take your thumb and place it on the back of the slide, and then as you insert the handgun into your holster, you can keep that slide from racking or cycling. And remember all the time, keep your booger picker off the trigger. So what's the difference in a handgun that has a safety that locks the slide, one that doesn't lock the slide, and a Glock? Well, really nothing, because a Glock doesn't have a safety. So when you present a Glock to the target, you don't engage the safety. You come up, make your engagements, come back into your workspace, finger off the trigger. Again, ammunition concerns, make sure the world is right, and then you holster the Glock. But just like with a handgun that has a manual safety that does not lock the slide, you want to place your thumb on the back of that Glock slide, and that'll help you slide it right into the holster, keeping your finger off the trigger all the time. There is another instance when having a manual thumb safety can be beneficial, and that's when you're shooting and moving. Because anytime you're shooting and moving, there's always a higher percentage chance that you're going to do something stupid with a handgun. Being able to engage a couple targets and then engage that manual thumb safety as you move to a new location, especially like you might be doing in competition shooting and maybe even in a self-defense situation, allows you to put that gun in a safe mode while you're moving, because you may forget to take your finger off the trigger, and should you stumble or fall or whatever, you could have a negligent discharge that could cause harm to you or somebody else. And then the final thing I want to mention is we talked about holstering and the use of a manual thumb safety to make that process safer. Well, there's another thing you can do to make that process safer, and that's to get a good holster. A holster that when you attempt to put the handgun in it, it doesn't want to make the slide come to the rear or cycle the slide. Still a good idea to have a manual thumb safety to lock that slide so you can slide that gun and have a holster and not have to worry about it so much. But having a quality holster that allows you to easily holster the gun is always a good idea. So I hope this gives you a better understanding of why a handgun might have a manual thumb safety and when and how you should use one. It doesn't really matter whether it's a handgun like this that has a safety that locks the slide or one like this that has a safety that does not lock the slide. You still use and apply them in the exact same way.